The great brown bear is one of the most iconic species in North America. These incredible creatures are highly intelligent and hold places in both our myth and fantasy. Brown bears once roamed throughout the continent, but human impact has relegated them to a few pockets of wilderness. Southeast Alaska is one of the last places remote and pristine enough to sustain healthy populations. Here, brown bears thrive in numbers higher than anywhere else on Earth and are an integral part of the ecosystem. From their feeding grounds in the pristine salmon estuaries to their winter dens in the high alpine. These protected watersheds offer the space, food, and rugged open terrain to keep these bears thriving. My name is Ben Hamilton. I'm a natural history filmmaker and avid outdoorsman. I've teamed up with good friend and wildlife biologist John Martin, big game guide Kevin Johnson, and conservationist Andrew Tomes to venture into this incredible wilderness and learn more about the world of bears. We'll be traveling over 20 miles on foot and raft, but this isn't going to be any easy weekend stroll. No more city lights and roads. Now we're entering Big Bear Country. At 7 a.m., we took off from the small town of Sitka, and within moments it felt like we were deep into the heart of the Tongass National Forest. The Tongass is the largest national forest in the United States and spans nearly 500 miles of rugged coastline. We were headed towards Chichagof Island, an area defined by large intact ecosystems and boasts one of the highest densities of brown bears on Earth. It's late July, and the bears that were dispersed across the island are beginning to gather in anticipation of the salmon run. This trip is all about getting into real bear country, and this island is one of the last places on Earth that has entirely protected watersheds. In fact, almost a third of this 2,000 square mile island is federally designated wilderness, the highest protection given to any public land. This protection allows bears to move freely across the landscape everywhere that water flows. As a filmmaker, I've never seen bears gather in such high numbers, and as we get closer to our drop-off point, I become eager for my first viewing.
So we're heading up now to up to the north end of Hoona Sound, and we're gonna get dropped off, and then we'll be hiking across a stretch of forest that's kind of a low pass to Lysianski Strait. It's a broad, low watershed with a lot of salmon activity, big forest on either side, and it's pretty prime bear habitat.
Andrew Tomes is the director of the Sitka Conservation Society and has worked for years fighting to preserve areas throughout Southeast Alaska. The Conservation Society was formed over 45 years ago when a group of concerned citizens saw much of the Tongass being cut for unsustainable timber. They fought for over 10 years to preserve some of the last intact habitats, and the result was the West Chichagof Wilderness area, which we will be traveling through. Andrew hopes this trip can give us a glimpse into the importance of large, intact wilderness for bears, but he's not looking for textbook answers. He's teamed up with Kevin and John to get a bear's eye view of conservation on the ground.
Yeah, the route that we're going on is going to be pretty awesome, actually, because on both ends of this route that we're walking south to north. On both ends are large estuaries that are prime salmon habitat, and the valley that connects, or that's between these two estuaries, is a great corridor for game to move freely between the two areas.
There's a couple bear there. So instead of one bear per square mile around here, you guys are gonna be seeing probably one bear per 100 square yards sometimes.
One on the right there. Walking up.
Oh yeah.
Those bears are ready for the fish to come up the river, and they're starting to up now.
We just got dropped off by a float plane at the edge of an estuary here on Chichagof Island. We're in a huge, big spruce tree forest on the edge of a big estuary. This is prime brown bear habitat. This is really dense brown bear habitat, and we're about to walk out across these flats. This is where the bears live, and I think there's a real good chance we're going to run into some big brown bears in here.
All right, this is where we flew in. We saw two bears right here.
They're working in this grass. They're grazing on the Ligby sedge and these taller grasses in here. There could be bears any place out in the grass out here. They could be lounging. And I'll look at that.
Yeah, the bear trap.
Yep.
Eating that trail looking for fish.
They're walking right along here waiting for the fish, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, look at that.
Okay.
100 yards or so, we've got a sow and looks like a first-year cub with her. Cub's quite a bit smaller than the sow, and they're just feeding on some sedges right now, kind of looking at us. I think these are the same two bears that we saw when we flew in. If you wheel your camera over here, grazing, see the cub's up on his hind legs on his mom's hind quarter, just stuck its head up. There it is again, standing up on its mom's butt.
You know, in a lot of places you see a sow and a couple cubs around here, but this country is so dense with bears that it's usually just a sow and one cub because she's losing the other cubs and there's a lot of bears for them to compete with here. But we saw that on this side. Let's walk up and see what it looks like on the other side.
With an exciting first bear encounter, we headed north on our 13-mile hike through the valley. On a topo map, the route looks tame, but we quickly slowed to a snail's pace as fallen logs were followed by thick alder, devil's club, and river crossings. Bear safety was a top priority for the trip, and the entire team was not only trained, but has decades of combined experience in this country. As we push on through the forest, we gain more respect for the bear's resilience and skill navigating this terrain. Their intricate trail systems connect the whole island, and our only hope of making our pickup point in 4 days is to follow them.
We've been walking for a little bit now, and we kind of stopped at this nice spot to check out some of the salmon habitat. We're actually having a little snack here, eating some salmon, and heading up through the valley. We've trying to make it to a lake. It's probably 2 miles or so from here. Moving through some pretty heavy brush. With a little bit of blowdown. Basically following bear trails through here. Seems to be quite a bit of fresh bear sign in here. So anyway, don't know how long it's going to take us to get to the lake. Kind of depends on what the bushwhacking's like.
This country's real hard to navigate in. You see that kind of alder slide like all that. A man can't even walk through. This nice open forest here is where the bears and everything travels, and then a nice center corridor stays out of the garbage patches. This old growth stuff's a lot of big mature spruce and devil's club, and all our hands are full of devil's club, and it's, I mean, even if you expand around, look what it's like in here, blown down timber, and you know, it's ugly country. So you need to pretty much follow those bear trails through this country. It's the only way to navigate.
After only 24 hours in the field with Kevin, it's clear that he's the real deal. This wild country is his backyard, and he's spent his whole life hunting and exploring these forests. Few people can likely claim that they've seen more bears than he has, and without his knowledge, navigating this rugged terrain could be slow and deadly. With Kevin's lead, we finally reached the estuary we've been pushing for. This is a huge concentration area for bears, and right as we arrive, we're treated with a unique sighting.
We're right here in the middle of this huge watershed on West Chichagof, and this is really where it all comes together right now. And all throughout this whole watershed and this whole estuary where it empties out into is a habitat that bears just move through with ease. They're built to be in this rugged country and in this habitat, and for them to move from the ridge tops over here down through this estuary to find the salmon and move across these rivers and into the hillsides and in the forest is nothing for them. All this terrain they can move through with ease.
In a matter of minutes, we watched the young male cross 2 streams and fade into the distance. This is an enormous estuary measuring nearly a mile long and half a mile wide. The bear made the crossing look like a breeze, but as we pushed for our campsite, we began to realize how large and dangerous this area really was. Dozens of bears are spread throughout estuaries like this, all waiting for salmon to arrive. And with low visibility and night falling, we prayed we wouldn't have a bad encounter. After 2 days of hiking, we finally had a chance to observe bears without distractions. We had already seen a mother and cub when we flew in and a handful of bears last night, but had even higher hopes for today.
We're just popping up on this little point right here, and we're trying to get up on some bears. There's a bear that's sitting over here in the grass. I think it's probably the same one that we saw last night. just a little guy. And he's kind of on the other side of this little slough here, but what we're actually hoping is that when we poke around this corner here, that we might actually see some more bears. We saw sow 2 cubs on that side over there last night, and another lone bear. So we're just kind of seeing what the wind's doing. It feels like the wind's kind of in our face, which is favorable for not spooking the bears. But we'll see what we can do. So this sedge that we have growing down here in these flats, if you look real close, you can see it looks like a lawnmower or a weed eater's gone over the top of this, and they've been eating this stuff off. These bears that come to these estuaries waiting for the salmon are packing on lots of calories, eating this stuff, but they're still waiting for those salmon.
Amazingly, a brown bear can eat up to 30 pounds of sedges in a single day, and this young bear is no exception. Most people think that bears only eat salmon, deer, and other big game year-round, but in this rugged country, they've adapted to eat everything from skunk cabbage and devil's club to sedges and berries. They are true omnivores, and this young bear has likely been eating non-stop since he stepped out of the den in May. We watched him graze for nearly half an hour, but with a quick change of the wind, he caught our scent and bolted.
Yeah, this is the area right where that little bear was hanging out, was in this grass and these sedges here eating. And he didn't have the best spot on the flat. I mean, this is not really that good of a spot. It's kind of anecdotal, but it's just sort of observation is you typically are going to see these smaller bears pushed out here, and the bigger bears are going to be heading up at the heads of the flats with the better territory. So, but you can see how much this is mowed down in here. Bears have been working this pretty good nonetheless.
As a wildlife biologist, John has spent his whole life tracking animals and trying to understand their behavior. But this morning, as we explored the flat, he searched for something very important, but that no one ever cares to find. Bear poop.
Yeah, these are some pretty magnum piles of bear scat. Take a look at the size just for scale on my hand here. You know, you can't tell exactly what a bear's eating, but throughout the year, their scat certainly changes shape and texture and color. If you look at the scat right now, it's pretty clear that it's mostly full of, sedges and grasses. And if you were to pick it apart, you can even see, partially digested, grass blades and sedge blades. But other times of the year when they're digging skunk cabbage, their poop gets real sort of glossy and shiny with little strips of white and black in there. And they're eating deer, foraging on winter kill. After they've emerged from their dens, their poop can look real black, and you can actually find bone fragments in there. And I've found late summer, August, I found piles up on the high ridges with little baby deer hooves in there. Obviously, when they start eating fish, their poop changes a lot, and they actually get diarrhea real bad. Seems like by the end of the summer, they've maybe filled themselves up on fish, and they've got the squirts real bad. And it's actually pretty nasty to walk up through those flats. So yeah, their poop is changing, but definitely when you look at this, you know that they're out here still grazing on this stuff out here. Yeah, it's nice and firm, but this is a big pile. These are big piles. This was probably made by a real decent sized bear.
It took some convincing, but we finally got John to stop shooting the shit, and he continued to lead us deeper into the estuary. As we pushed towards the headwaters, the sedges got taller and taller, and luckily we stopped just in time to see a brown object moving up ahead.
There's a bear. It's pretty close. About as close as you want to get with these things. He's about 50 yards or less. Just a little guy. You can barely see his hump over the grass over here. And he's just chewing grass, doing his thing. I think he's, like Kevin just said, he's starting to sense that something's going on around here. He's starting to look up around a little bit more. So I wouldn't be surprised here in a few minutes if he stands up on his hind legs and gives us a good look and then darts on out of here. But we should be pretty good right here. We've got 4 people, and it's a pretty big group of people, and it's less likely anyway that negative bear experience here, but we're just gonna see what he does. It's that same little bear. It's probably gonna lay down right in our trail.
As weather turned from clouds to rain, we began our hike back to camp and concluded our time on this side of the island. In 2 days, we saw over a dozen bears and were able to observe them in a way few people will ever experience. This wilderness is an oasis for wildlife, and it is such a unique experience to walk in another world. We only had a few days to reach our pickup point on the other side of the island, but the march ahead was not going to be an easy one. This country is rugged, and some areas are completely inaccessible to humans. This trip is all about getting into big bear country. And to do that, we left the rocky shores to travel by raft.
We're doing our best to cover the country here, but obviously the bears are better adapted to this than us. They're on all fours, they can stand up, they got big claws that help them grab onto roots and logs and move through this country. We hit these, massive walls here in the Goulding Lake system, and that's why we brought the pack rafts. And so the pack rafts, we take those out of the pack, inflate them, and paddle across the lakes, and we can really cover some country through this terrain. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be able to make it through this lake system hiking on these hill slopes over here, or we could, and it'd be a real hard time. We just got off the pack rafts on the Goulding Lakes, and we're heading down on the trail, the old worn out trail down to Goulding Harbor. We just had to cross a big gorge. There was a bridge at one time, I think it was 50 years ago, that washed out. We had to scramble down to the bottom of the gorge and scramble across the rocks. The Tongass is a temperate rainforest, and you get a lot of weather that's extreme. It went from beautiful sunny day to raining like this in no time. This is the mountains, and you pay to be out here for the conditions, but this is the kind of stuff you get.
We were now across the island in an area I've personally filmed in on 3 different occasions. It's an absolutely beautiful estuary, and more importantly, it's a haven for bears. With our scent hidden by the trees, we knew this might be our best chance for viewing bears on the entire expedition.
I can see them there. They're right about 50 yards away from us on the other side of this hill. On the left side over here. Let's see if we can get you just a little bit closer. If you look right through the trees here, he's kind of looking around like he knows something. So there could very well easily be a bear bedded down in this stuff in here, so that's why normally you'd want to make a lot of noise in this situation to alert the bears of your presence so you don't have a negative. Sound of cub. Oh yeah, I see one. There's that one over there. Real dark. Black one. Yeah, real dark. Yep. Right. On that small teenage bear over here. And we came out here, we've got a sow, and it looks like a first year cub. You can see, you probably can't see from that distance, but a real small cub. But a real big, healthy looking sow. She's nice looking bear. And over here on this side, you have what looks like a boar. He's jet black. He looked pretty big when I saw him from over on this side. He's got a big old snout, big old head on him. It's probably the biggest bear we've seen on this trip. He's a nice looking bear. So we've got four. Nope, she's got 2 cubs. Looks like. So what might be happening right now is this big boar, might be keeping the sow and cub pushed over on this side, or sow and cubs. She's just got 2 little bitty cubs, so she's a big bear, but she's going to play it safe, so she's probably hanging out on this side away from that big male. And then that, 3 or 4 year old bear that we just saw around the corner, that smaller one, has probably been pushed over in this corner as well, away from this guy. And we could see some salmon in the creek, but they're still out here foraging on grass, so salmon probably haven't moved up into a spot that makes fishing real easy for them. So.
This moment defined the expedition. We were completely surrounded by bears and finally had the chance to observe the dynamic between them. This island has one of the highest densities of brown bears on Earth, which means bears like this are often working with territories 10 to 50 times smaller than bears in other parts of the world. This makes for a fragile balance of space and power that we had to be careful not to interrupt ourselves. We watched all 5 bears, then quietly moved to get a better view of the sow and cubs.
So there's three bears down here, a little over 100 yards away from us. We're sitting up on a little knob, about 40 or 50 feet up above sea level, and so we've got a pretty good advantage on her just for viewing. She's a pretty nice sized sow. She's probably one of the biggest sows we've seen, and she looks real smart too. She's real aware, looking around. Her cubs are first-year cubs. They were just born this past winter while she was up in the den, and you can see that she's lactating. See her nipples hanging down on her ventral surface, and what's really cool is her 2 cubs look completely different. One looks jet black and the other is sort of a brownish color. And it's funny, the jet black one seems to be staying further away from mom, maybe a little bit more brave, and an eagle flew over and just made a call, and the little brown cub ran right for its mom and went right underneath of her. But the little black cub, he didn't seem to mind so much. Boars will kill small cubs, and they're trying to, because females won't breed if they have cubs, so males going around killing cubs makes it more possible for that male to have an opportunity to train her up. So yeah, there's survival rate. I mean, some bears can have 3 cubs. I've even heard of 4 cubs to a sow, but typically that they're not going to survive to maturation. They're going to be either die during the winter or be picked off by a large male bear.
We watched the sow and cub for what seemed like an hour and then headed to our camp. We knew we were completely surrounded by bears, and as night fell, we heard some pretty disturbing sounds. Still, today was a new day, and we were excited to get out and see what we could find.
Well, here it is this morning, and we're going to go look for bears. And you obviously see where we're on the island was a bear came to visit us last night. And
how'd that make you feel?
I didn't know about it, so it didn't bother me.
What was that we were hearing earlier, the crossing?
Maybe 2 cubs playing, I have no idea. Maybe a mom pissed off at somebody else. I don't know. I didn't see it.
This was our last day of the expedition, and we had one more chance to see some bears in action. We hiked back across the harbor to the mouth of the stream, and as we peered out through the trees, we spotted a different sow with 2 teenage cubs trying to fish for salmon.
All right, so we woke up this morning in Goulding Harbor in the middle of an estuary. There's bears all around us in this estuary. It's a really productive place, a really big estuary with a lot of little nooks and crannies. We were watching a sow and 2 cubs, and she's waiting for the salmon to come in. The salmon are in, but she's waiting for them to get into a good spot where she can fish for them. She gave a couple lunges for salmon, but didn't catch any. There's a big boar up there too who's staking out his territory on a real nice point over there before a waterfall. Pool filled with salmon, so he's got that territory staked out too, and he's going to want to be fishing for salmon in there. This was a really amazing trip, a really amazing hike across Chichagof Island, and it was amazing to see this bear country, all the bear sign and bear trails that we went through, and to walk through watersheds that are intact from the high ridges down to saltwater and on the estuaries. Really amazing, and a privilege to be surrounded by all these bears and all this wild country.
We watched a showdown between the sow and boar for a few hours, and it was incredible to see the delicate dynamic of the estuary play out in front of us. This really was the perfect ending to an amazing expedition. We had hiked and rafted over 20 miles, seen over 36 bears, and got to explore some of the most wild country in North America. The Tongass National Forest is the largest remaining intact rainforest on Earth, and thanks to conservationists of the past, there are still places like this where nature rules, salmon swim free, and bears roam from ridgeline to estuary. We hope that better understanding of these places can help ensure that bears and other wildlife have a home throughout our country. But there are still millions of acres on the Tongass facing threats like mining and clear-cut logging that will ruin vital habitat. We bid the island of West Chichagof farewell, but we'll keep working to ensure that the great brown bear will have a wild home for generations to come.